All right, let's dive into the power of now. This book, man, it's one of those started small, blew up huge stories.
Okay.
Eckhart Tolle self-publishes this spiritual guide,
Hmm.
and boom, word of mouth turns it into this global phenomenon. And that's going to tell you something, right? Powerful ideas at work. And you, always up for learning, I bet you're curious what the fuss is all about.
Well, yeah, it is pretty amazing how a book that goes this deep into like spiritual stuff ends up connecting with so many people.
Right.
Totally just nailed it, talking about being present, finding enlightenment.
Absolutely. So for this deep dive, we're not just going to recap. We're going for those aha moments you can actually use in your life.
Yeah.
Think about it. How often are you stuck replaying past mistakes?
No, all the time.
Or freaking out about stuff that hasn't even happened? That's that mental trap Totally tackling, right?
Yeah, for sure. And he doesn't just tell you be present and leave you hanging.
Right.
He actually gives you ways to break free from that, what he calls psychological time warp.
Love that. And he has this great analogy about the mind.
Yeah.
He's like, it's this super powerful tool, but most of us are using it totally wrong.
I can see that.
Like trying to hammer a nail with the handle,
Mm-hmm.
powerful, but creating more problems than it's solving.
Makes sense.
And that's where you are not. Your mind comes in. He's not saying you don't have a mind, obviously, but that you are not those thoughts. You're the awareness behind the thoughts.
Trippy, right?
Yeah, that is pretty deep. But how do you actually do that? Separate yourself from your thoughts. I mean, I'm thinking constantly. It's like
Right.
nonstop.
So Tolle talks about this technique called watching the thinker.
Okay.
Instead of getting carried away by every single thought, you practice just observing them. No judgment. Like they're clouds passing by.
I see. So instead of saying, ugh, I'm so stressed about work,
Yeah.
you just notice that thought popping up and let it float on.
Exactly. It's like making space between you and your thoughts.
Yeah. So you can actually choose which ones to pay attention to. And this is something you can practice anytime, anywhere, right?
Right.
Because the present moment is always there.
It is. It's interesting that Tolle, he came to these realizations after going through a really rough time.
Yeah.
He talks about feeling close to like a breakdown
Oh, wow.
before this sudden awakening hits him.
Yeah.
Imagine just walking down the street and suddenly everything's brand new.
Wow.
Like seeing it for the first time.
That's powerful.
That feeling of aliveness, of just being in the moment, that's what he's pointing to as the source of enlightenment,
Yeah. Okay, so we've got you are not your mind and being present. But then he throws in this other idea that kind of blew my mind. The pain body. Sounds kind of freaky,
Oh, yeah.
but it's so relatable.
Understanding.
Think of it this way. You're in a great mood, really. Then someone says something totally harmless, but it triggers this wave of anger or sadness in you.
Well, I know exactly what you mean.
That's the pain body being activated. All that unresolved emotional pain from your past just sitting there in your subconscious.
Interesting.
It's like this little voice whispering all the negative stuff, stopping you from experiencing real joy, peace.
That makes sense. And wait, Tolle says you can actually get rid of this pain body?
Yeah.
How?
By becoming aware of it. He has this powerful quote, everything exposed to the light becomes light.
Whoa.
So by facing our pain, we can actually free ourselves from it. Feels kind of counterintuitive,
It does.
but it makes sense, right?
Yeah, it does. It's not about dwelling in the pain,
Right.
but shining a light on it, seeing it without judgment, and letting it transform. And that leads us to another big idea in the power of now, surrender.
Ooh, surrender.
Now, I know that word can be kind of loaded for some people, like it means giving up or admitting defeat.
Yeah, I get that. My first thought was surrender was like waving a white flag, just letting fate do whatever,
Right.
not exactly empowering.
No, not at all. But the way Tolle talks about it, surrender is really about letting go of that resistance to what is to this moment.
Okay.
Like imagine you're stuck in the mud. The more you struggle, the deeper you sink, right?
Yeah, I've been there.
So surrendering is saying, okay, I'm going to stop fighting. And then you can see clearly what to do to get unstuck.
So accepting the situation, but without that mental resistance on top of it.
Exactly. And it's not passive. It's about aligning yourself with how life's moving, trusting there's something bigger at work, even when things are tough.
He even says surrender can like transform illness into enlightenment.
That's a big one.
It's not about giving up on taking care of yourself, but shifting how you feel inside to allow
Which opens up a whole new level of awareness, basically.
And speaking of things we tend to fight against, let's talk about the ego.
Oh, yeah, the ego. That's a big one.
It gets thrown around so much, but what does it actually mean in the power of now?
For Tolle, the ego is this fake sense of self, something our minds cook up. It's that voice in your head always comparing, judging, needing approval from everyone else.
Oh, like the one telling me I'm not good enough, successful enough, whatever enough,
Exactly.
always wanting more, never satisfied.
That's it. And it clings to stuff that doesn't last, your possessions, achievements, even how you look. Creates this illusion you're separate from the world, leading to loneliness, feeling like you lack something.
It's that feeling of never being whole, always chasing something outside yourself.
You got it. And the ego's favorite weapon? Fear. Fear of failing, of the future, of not being loved.
That's a powerful weapon.
It uses fear to keep you in that negativity loop, stopping you from really being present.
So how do we escape this ego trap? Sounds pretty strong.
Awareness is the first step. Tolle suggests that watching the thinker technique we talked about.
Right.
But this time, you're specifically watching for the ego's thought patterns.
I see.
You see the voice in your head, but without judgment, knowing those thoughts aren't really you.
So stepping back from the ego's drama, choosing which thoughts to engage with, which to let go.
Exactly. Taking back your power, knowing you can choose how to respond.
Tolle also talks about different levels of unconsciousness.
Oh, yes.
Different levels.
He talks about two main types.
Wow.
Ordinary unconsciousness. That's like every day being lost in thought, not present. It's like being on autopilot, just going through the motions.
Happens to all of us, like driving somewhere familiar and you realize you don't even remember the last few miles.
Exactly. You were somewhere else in your head.
Totally.
Then there's deep unconsciousness.
Yep.
It gets triggered when the ego senses a threat.
So like challenges to who we think we are, relationship conflicts, maybe fear of loss or failure.
Exactly. And that's when the pain body kicks in, big time.
Oh, I see.
It gets activated, makes the suffering worse, blocks you from that peace of the present moment even more.
So it's like a double whammy.
It is. The ego makes the fear, pain body amplifies it, keeps you stuck.
Tolle even suggests these individual patterns of unconsciousness or like reflections of a collective unconsciousness, right?
Yeah, affecting all of humanity.
Collective unconsciousness. What's that look like?
It's this deep down resistance to that's everywhere. In our culture, institutions, even how we think. Think about our obsession with past and future, how addicted we are to thinking, constantly chasing stuff, needing validation.
Thanks, we're sleepwalking through life.
Yeah, disconnected from this moment, from who we really are.
And that's causing a lot of suffering.
A lot. Not just for people, but for the planet too. We're messing up the environment, caught in conflicts, all because we're acting from fear, separation.
Is there any way out of this, breaking free from this collective trance?
Tolle believes a shift in consciousness is, essential for us to survive.
Okay.
He sees us at this turning point, moving from an ego-driven reality based on fear to one based on love, being present, being connected.
So waking up from the collective dream, realizing we're all connected, one with everything.
Exactly. And he thinks it's already happening. People all over are embodying this new consciousness.
That's hopeful.
They're the pioneers, showing us the way.
It's like a ripple effect, right?
Yeah, the more people wake up, the more their awareness spreads, influences others, creates transformation.
And as daunting as shifting collective consciousness sounds, Tolle reminds us it starts with each of us.
Right.
Our own inner change is the most powerful thing we can do to help humanity wake up. Okay, so we've got the power of now, the ego, the pain body, surrender, and this collective shift in consciousness.
It's a lot.
But how do we actually use all this, live it? Does Tolle give us any practical techniques?
Oh, absolutely he does. One of the most powerful and practical techniques he talks about is self-observation.
Self-observation, okay.
Yeah, it's about becoming aware of your thoughts, your emotions, how you react to things, but without judging them.
Okay.
It's like taking a step back, becoming the observer of your own inner world.
Right.
Instead of getting swept away by every thought or emotion, you just notice them as they come up.
Yeah. So it's kind of like that watching the thinker, but for everything inside us.
Exactly. And the more you do this, the more you see those ego patterns.
I see.
You recognize the thoughts, the behaviors, the stuff that keeps you stuck in suffering.
Yeah.
And then you can choose to step away from them.
It's like becoming a scientist of your own mind.
Right.
Studying your thoughts, emotions, but with curiosity, not judgment.
And as you observe yourself more, you might also notice this deeper connection to your body.
Oh, interesting.
Tolle talks about bringing your attention to the sensations you feel inside.
So instead of being all up in our heads,
Yeah.
we start to feel more grounded, like present in our bodies.
Exactly. The inner body, it's like a doorway to being. Focusing on your breath, feeling your feet on the ground, the air on your skin,
Yeah.
that anchors you to the present moment.
It's like coming home to yourself, to who you really are,
Yeah.
beyond all the mental chatter, the ego stuff.
Yeah. And from that place of grounded presence,
Yeah.
you can move through the world with more clarity, compassion, peace. You act in ways that match your true purpose. Your relationships become real, fulfilling.
Speaking of relationships, Tolle spends a lot of time in the book talking about enlightened relationships.
Oh, yeah, he does.
He says most of us are stuck looking for love and fulfillment in the wrong places.
Right. He says we look to others to complete us, fill some emptiness inside.
Yeah.
But that creates neediness, dependence, which leads to all kinds of drama.
It's like we're projecting our own unmet needs onto our partners, expecting them to make us happy, give us a sense of worth.
Exactly. And that's where the ego goes wild in relationships.
Makes sense.
It creates all these expectations, demands, leads to jealousy, possessiveness, needing to control everything.
So how do we get from those ego-driven relationships to the enlightened ones Tully talks about?
He says the key is to find that wholeness within yourself first, when you don't need someone else to complete you. You can relate to them from a place of love, presence, acceptance.
So take care of your own needs first. Find your own worth, your own completeness before getting into a relationship.
Exactly. And when both people do that, they create this dynamic of shared presence, mutual respect, acceptance.
That sounds like a different kind of love, not based on neediness, but on connection and awareness.
It is. And while Tolle knows there'll still be challenges, conflicts in these enlightened relationships,
Right, that's realistic.
he says they're handled differently.
So instead of reacting from the ego with blame, getting defensive, you respond with awareness, compassion, trying to understand.
Exactly. And there's this willingness to own your emotions, your actions, knowing you always have a choice in how you respond.
That brings us to one of the most, well, maybe challenging ideas in The Power of Now, conscious death.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Not talking about physical death here, right?
No. Tolle is talking about the ego dying, letting go of that limited, conditioned self we create with our thoughts, beliefs.
So shedding all those layers of who we think we are.
Right, to reveal our true essence.
Our connection to, like, the divine, the source of everything.
Exactly. And this conscious death can happen slowly or suddenly. It might be triggered by suffering, deep meditation, or even just ordinary moments of presence.
Like Tolle's own awakening.
Absolutely. And he says this awakening is essential not just for us personally, but for all of humanity to evolve.
It's like we're being called to wake up from this collective dream of separation, of fear.
And step into a new reality, one based on love, connection, presence.
Wow. The Power of Now is such a profound book. We've covered so much, and I feel like we've only just started.
Yeah, it really is. It's a book you can keep coming back to, finding new meaning every time.
As we wrap up, what's the one message from The Power of Now you hope our listener takes away?
For me, the most important thing is that enlightenment isn't some far-off goal. It's here right now in this moment. It's realizing we're not our minds, not our egos, but pure consciousness, pure being. And from that place of awareness, we can transform our lives and help wake up humanity.
Beautifully said. It's been amazing exploring the power of now with you. And to our listener, thanks for joining us. May you find peace, presence, and enlightenment in the now.